Hello and welcome to this programming tutorial for the E-flite Habu SS 70mm. Today I'll be programming this DX6E transmitter, but this programming is applicable for all DX G2 radios. We'll get started by selecting a brand new model. Click the scroll wheel and scroll down to System Setup and click. By going into the System Setup menu, we get this warning letting us know that by proceeding, it will shut off our RF deck, meaning there'll be no signal being transmitted from our radio. Click Yes. And now scroll down to Model Select and click. And we'll scroll all the way down to Add New Model and click. And Create. Now let's name the model. Scroll down to Model Name. And starting with the first character, click. I'll name this one Habu SS 70mm. Once you have the name entered, push the back button twice to take you back to the main screen. And now click the scroll wheel and let's scroll down to DR and Expo to set up our dual rates and exponential. Click. And we'll start with the aileron channel since that's what's already selected. Scroll down to where it says switch. Click and scroll right to select a switch. I'll be using the C switch. With my C switch in the 0 position, that will be high rates. I'll leave the rates at 100%. But according to the manual, I need to add 15% expo on the high rates. So I'll click on the 0 for expo and scroll to the right to bring it up to 15%. And then click to lock it in. Now I'll flip the C switch down to the 1 position for our low rates. And now I'll bring the 100s down to 70. And then add a 5% expo. And click to lock it in. Now we can see our aileron high and low rates are working as they should. Now that our aileron dual rates and expo are set, let's scroll up to where it says aileron and click. Scroll to the right and select elevator. Now scroll down to switch on and select the switch. C switch in the 0 position is again high rates. We'll leave the dual rates at 100%. But this time we need to add an expo of 10%. We'll flip down to our low rate position. And now we'll adjust the 100s down to 70. And add an expo of 5%. You can see those are working as they should. Now let's do the same for the rudder channel. We'll scroll up to elevator and click, and scroll to the right to rudder. Scroll down to switch on, select the switch. High rate position, 100%. Expo, we'll add 10%. Now we'll flip down to the low rate position and dial our dual rates down to 70%. And add a 5% expo. We can test the switch to see that it's working as it should with our high and low rates. Now we'll push the back button and we'll scroll down 1 to throttle cut. Click on throttle cut and then click on inhibit. Scroll to the right to select a throttle cut switch. The H switch is most commonly used for throttle cut, and that's the switch I'll be using. We can see that just by selecting the switch, it automatically sets the throttle cut position to -100%. That's exactly what we want. When we flip our throttle cut on, it locks our throttle channel in at -100%. This is very important when out at the flying field to help reduce the chance of an accidental throttle up. Now that this is set, we can push the back button twice to go back to our main screen. Now our DX6E is programmed and ready to fly the Habu SS 70mm. Thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial. Hello and welcome to this programming tutorial for the E-flite Habu SS 70mm. Today I'll be programming with this NX6 transmitter, but these programming instructions are applicable for all Spektrum NX radios. Let's get started by selecting a brand new model. Click the scroll wheel and scroll down to System Setup. And click. This is a warning letting you know that by proceeding into the next menu, it'll shut off our RF deck, meaning no signal will be sent from our transmitter. Click Yes, and now scroll down to Model Select. Click, and scroll down to Add New Model, and scroll down to Create and click. And now let's name the model. Go down to Model Name and click. And starting with the first character, I'll name this one Habu SS 70mm. Once you have the model entered, push the back button twice to take you back to the home screen. And now click the scroll wheel, and now let's set up our dual rate and exponential. Scroll down to DR and Expo and click. And we can start with the aileron channel since that's what's already selected. Scroll down to where it says Switch On and click. Scroll to the right to select a switch to be your dual rate switch. I'll be using the C switch. With the C switch in the 0 position, that will be my high rates, so I'll leave the rates at 100%. However, according to the manual, we need to add an expo of 15%. Click to lock it in. Now I'll flip the C switch down to the 1 position for our low rate position, and I'll change the rate down to 70%. Click to lock it in, and then scroll down to Expo and add 5% Expo. Now we can see we have high and low rates per the manual for the aileron channel. Let's do the same for the elevator and rudder channel. Scroll up to aileron and click, and scroll to the right to change it to elevator. Now scroll down to switch on and click, and scroll to the right to select your switch. The C switch in the 0 position, that's my high rates, so I'll leave the rate at 100%, but I need to add an expo of 10%. Now I'll flip the C switch down to the 1 position for my low rate position, and I'll adjust the 100s down to 70. Click to lock it in, and then I'll add a 5% expo. You can see those are working as they should. Now finally, let's do the same for the rudder channel. Click on elevator, scroll to the right to change it to rudder. Scroll down to switch on and click, and scroll to the right to select your switch. C switch in the 0 position, my high rates. I'll leave at 100 and add an expo of 10%. I'll flip my switch down to the 1 position for low rates, and I'll bring that rate down to 70%. And then I'll add expo of 5%. And now we can see that is also working as it should. Now we can push the back button, take us back to the function list, and now scroll down to throttle cut and click. Scroll down to inhibit and click, and scroll right to select a throttle cut switch. The H switch is most commonly used as throttle cut, and that's the switch I'll be using. We can see that just by selecting the switch, it automatically sets the position to -100. This is very important when out at the flying field, as it locks the throttle channel in at -100%. This can help reduce the chance of an accidental throttle up. Now that we have our throttle cut switch set, we can now push the back button twice to go back to the main screen. Our NX6 is now programmed and ready to fly the Habu SS 70mm. Thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial. Hello and welcome to this transmitter programming tutorial for the E-flite Habu SS 70mm. Today I'll be programming with this IX14 transmitter, but this programming is applicable for all Spektrum IX radios. Let's get started by selecting a brand new model. Click the orange marker at the top left-hand side of the screen, and then click Proceed. Now click the three orange dots at the top right-hand side, and then click Add New Model. Default, Airplane, Create. Now scroll down to the bottom to find the aircraft we just made. There it is at the bottom, Acro. Click. And now click where it says Acro, and we can give it a name. We'll delete what's in there. And then I'll call this one Habu SS 70mm. Once you have the name punched in, hit Done, and then push the back button. Push the back button once again. Now we're back on our home screen. Now let's set up our dual rates and exponential. Click on Model Adjust, and then click on Dual Rates and Expo. We can start with the aileron channel, since that's what's already selected for us. Click where it says Switch On, and select your switch. I'll be using the C switch as my dual rate switch. With the C switch in the 0 position, that will be our high rates. So we'll leave the dual rate percentages at 100%. However, we need to add Expo of 15%. So click on Expo and move it up to 15. Okay. Now we'll flip the C switch down to the 1 position for our low rates for the ailerons. And we can click on the 100s on dual rates and bring those down to 70%. And click OK. And now click on Expo and add a 5% Expo. Okay. Now we can see when we flip our C switch, our dual rate switch, up to 0, that's our high rates, and flip it down to 1, and there we have our low rates. Now let's set up our elevator and rudder channels as well. Click on where it says Aileron, and then click Elevator. Now click where it says Switch On, and select your switch. With the C switch in the 0 position, our high rates, we'll leave it at 100% and add 10% Expo. Okay. Now we'll flip the C switch down to the 1 position for low rates, and we'll click on the dual rate 100s and drop those down to 70%. And OK to lock it in. And then click on Expo, and we'll add 5% Expo. Now we can see when we flip our C switch, we have high and low rates for our elevator channel. Now finally, let's do it for our rudder channel. Click on where it says Elevator, and now click Rudder. Click on Switch On to select the switch. switch C. Switch C in the 0 position, leave at 100. Add 10% expo. Now we can flip the C switch to the 1 position for low rates. Click on the dual rate 100% and bring those down to 70. And now click on expo and add 5%. And click OK. Now our dual rates and expo are set up. Push the back button. And now click on throttle cut. To set up our throttle cut, all we have to do is select a switch. Click where it says inhibit. And scroll to select a switch. The H switch is most commonly used for throttle cut, and that's the switch I'll be using. We can see that just by selecting the switch, our position is set to negative 100%. That means when we flip the throttle cut on, our throttle channel is now locked in at negative 100%. This is very important when out at the flying field to help reduce the chance of an accidental throttle up. Now we can push the back button twice to take us back to our home screen. This IX-14 is now programmed and ready to fly the Habu SS 70mm. Thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial.